Life and death decisions the government makes can sometimes also seem arbitrary, like when to go to war and how to wage it. When Republican National Committee Chair and former Maryland Lieutenant Governor Michael Steele suggested this week that the war in Afghanistan was a mistake and a war of President Obama's choice, he was condemned by his own party, but not by everyone in his own party. Republican Congressman Ron Paul from Texas says Steele has it right. Also with us, former UN Ambassador John Bolton, Cato Institute Foreign Policy Director Chris Preble, along with my Fox News colleague, Democratic pollster Doug Schoen. Congressman Paul, to you first. Was Chairman Steele right when he said this is President Obama's war, it's a mistake, and it can't be won?
Sure, I think he's right. He might be politically incorrect on how he did it and how it was played out, but he's absolutely right. It's sort of the announcement that the king has no clothes. I mean, these were his honest sentiments. I think they're right. I think it's a mistake. I think it's going badly, and he was right historically. The part that they keep challenging him on, he says it's Obama's war. Well, you know, they're playing on words there. If that's their strongest argument, they don't have much of an argument against Steele, because Obama happens to be the commander-in-chief, and he's been that way a year and a half. So it is his war, just as it was Nixon's war after 1968. So, and one thing we have to give credit to Obama about is he never minced his words, even in the campaign. He was more hawkish than McCain, I thought, in the campaign. More troops into Afghanistan. That's the good war. Well, I just disagree with that entirely. Our CIA has revealed now that there's maybe 100 al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, maybe a couple hundred in Pakistan. It's way overkill. The country's going broke. What really gripes me about the Republicans is they're willing to go to the mat and cut health benefits or unemployment benefits, but they won't ever consider cutting one penny from this monstrous militarism and the empire that we're running around the world.
Ambassador Bolton, you're a Republican. You were UN ambassador to United States ambassador to the UN under a Republican president. You don't agree with anything Congressman Paul just said, do you?
No, I don't. Look, let's be clear. There are two strategic interests the United States has in this conflict in Afghanistan. One is to make sure that the combination of Taliban and al-Qaeda do not retake control of the country and once again turn it into a base for international terrorism as they did before 9/11. And two, we need to ensure that instability in Afghanistan doesn't feed into instability in Pakistan.
But historically, Mr. Ambassador, aren't Chairman Steele and Congressman Paul correct that no foreign country has ever successfully occupied Afghanistan and left it freer or more democratic than it was before the occupation?
I don't want to occupy Afghanistan. It'd be great if it were freer and more democratic. Those are not our strategic objectives. I told you one. Let me finish the second one. The second one is to make sure that instability on one side of the border doesn't feed into instability in Pakistan and have Taliban and al-Qaeda or other religious fanatics take control of that country and its extremely large arsenal of nuclear weapons, which would be a global threat. Those are important reasons for the United States and our NATO allies to be there.
From the point of view of the Democrats, Doug Schoen, which is the real Republican Party? Congressman Paul and Chairman Steele, who say it's President Obama's war, it's a mistake, it can't be won? Or Ambassador Bolton, who says the area is such a tinderbox, if we're not there, it'll get worse?
You know, Judge, we don't know, and that's the great advantage the Democrats have, a divided Republican Party. Increasingly, the sentiments of Congressman Paul and his son and candidates like Sharon Angle, who are Tea Party candidates suspicious of the war in Afghanistan, are coming to dominate the Republican Party. As a Democrat who supports the war effort, I would associate myself and our party with Lindsey Graham, who says this is America's war. We have common principles, common values, and a common commitment to fighting al-Qaeda.
Before I go to Chris Preble, I want to make sure I have this straight. Doug Schoen, Democratic consultant, pollster extraordinaire, agreeing with John Bolton, hawk, neocon, Republican appointee of George Bush.
And President Obama, who would have mouthed similar sentiments were he here.
Chris Preble, why do we not belong in Afghanistan? What's wrong with this argument?
Well, I think we have to recognize this was a war of choosing, in the sense that President Obama chose to prosecute a nation-building mission in Afghanistan, which is very different than the mission that we undertook immediately after 9/11, which President Bush initiated. And I think I'm very curious and just kind of puzzled by the extent to which conservatives who wisely opposed nation building in the 1990s under Bill Clinton are now embracing nation building under Barack Obama. Look, you do not need 100,000 U.S. troops in Afghanistan to hunt 100 al-Qaeda figures. We drove al-Qaeda from power and the Taliban from power with a few hundred American troops on the ground and mostly with our Northern Alliance allies.
Ambassador Bolton, General Jones, the former Commandant of the Marine Corps, four-star general, now President Obama's national security advisor, said on the eve of the buildup of troops in Afghanistan there were fewer than 100 Taliban there. Question, Mr. Ambassador, why do we need 100,000 troops on the ground to chase 100 people from that country?
Well, I think the situation's a lot graver than that, and I think this is a very difficult combat environment. A lot of the al-Qaeda people have escaped into Pakistan, causing trouble there. That's one of the reasons why this requires extensive effort with the government of Pakistan, which is an incredibly difficult thing to do. I think for a bunch of people in armchairs here in the States to second-guess how many troops are required is a mistake. But let me say this. I want to be very clear. I don't support the nation-building strategy of the Obama administration or much of what the Bush administration did in that regard. That's not the issue. The issue is America's strategic interest, which I laid out before, not making Afghanistan a nicer place.
Congressman Paul, are we a republic or an empire?
We're an empire. There's a remnant and there's a memory about the republic. But we're in, 130-some countries. We have 900 bases. It's just overwhelming, and it's draining us. And actually, we're fulfilling the wishes of Osama bin Laden. He said that we're going to drag you over here and drag you into these wars, and we're going to bog you down, and we're going to get dissent in America, and we're going to bankrupt you.
Chris?
So I can't see why this position that people are so enthusiastic about, and Osama bin Laden are really, he's really laughing about all this because, unfortunately, the instability that Secretary Bolton talks about, yes, I agree with him. It's unstable, and we want stability, but I say our presence and our foreign policy is the creator of this instability that we all abhor.
Chris Preble, I know you're an academic. Which is the real Republican Party? Wars of defense only, like Congressman Paul says, or go where you have to go, like Ambassador Bolton says?
Well, I think we're having this debate right now. We're having it today. We're having it in the party, and I think it's not yet resolved. I think that the kinds of Republican voices that were most outspoken in the 1990s, criticizing using our military as essentially armed social workers, they are returning, and they are starting to be more outspoken and saying, look, we can prosecute a war against al-Qaeda without trying to build a functioning nation-state in Afghanistan, a nation-state around a guy like Hamid Karzai, who is extraordinarily unpopular and corrupt.
Got it.
That's
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
Thank you. One more question. Doug, did you ever think that the Democrats would agree more with John Bolton than with Ron Paul?
Well, it's hard to agree with Ron Paul on a lot of things, except that our country's in trouble. But we have core American values as a democracy who stands for freedom and liberty.
But Democrats today want war. Do I have that right?
They want core values and a fight against al-Qaeda prosecuted successfully.
Congressman Paul, Ambassador Bolton, Chris Preble, Doug Schoen, thanks for joining us.